Welcome back to the Scarfey Spurs Talk Podcast. In this episode, we'll be talking about the upcoming January transfer window, hugely significant one. I feel like we say that every window as Tottenham fans, but you just feel £100 million cash injection, new look leadership team. This could be, you hope anyway, a little bit different. But as you know, I tend to be the optimistic one. So that could be coming back to bite, coming back to haunt me, let's just say, when reality kicks in. But to join me through this and get me through the international break, which I can't wait to end, I'm joined by four fantastic guests. So let's introduce them. We'll start with Joseph. Thank you so much for coming back on, Joseph. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me, Harry. Yeah, it's great to be back. Obviously, you know, I love talking transfers. Made a video on here in the summer, actually, on your channel regarding transfers. That was really enjoyable to make, and it's definitely a big thing that I like to look into. So got a couple of ones we'll talk about. Obviously, a big January window coming up for Tottenham, so we'll see how that goes. But obviously, you know, big game on the weekend as well. I know you'll preview that in another in another podcast, but still, you know, it's an eventful time at Tottenham, and finally, you know, off the back of these international breaks, we won't have one for a while now, so it's going to be full throttle now for Tottenham. So let's get into it all, and I'm really excited for it.
Bring it on, I say. But thank you, Joseph, for coming on. I gave you the last minute call up, so apologies about the lateness, but I just knew that, you know, it's right up your street with transfers, and that video you done was great. So great to have you on today. Thank you very much. And Luke, welcome back on from Spotlite on Spurs podcast twice in quick concession. So sorry you get put up with me again. How are you doing though?
I could say the same thing for you, mate. Sorry you got to put up with me. And sorry to the listeners that they got to hear me again. Apologies for that. Mate, I'm doing well. For an international break, we was just saying before we came on, there hasn't been some major news in the last couple. There has been, but this is Spurs, so we never know. There could be something dropping while we're live. Let's find out.
I wouldn't put it past Tottenham at all. Really wouldn't. Anything could happen. You hope that less of this kind of stress with the new look leadership team, but you just don't know. Again, don't rule it out. Thank you for joining me today, though. And Justin, welcome back onto the podcast. I mean, transfers is right up your street as well. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Pleased to be on. I mean, as I say, like the others, love transfers, and I know we're going to dive into it, but this is now the statement window, I think, for the club. This one and this summer, I think, are the ones where they have to prove if what they were actually saying was that better than Levy or just no different.
Exactly that. Yeah, big kind of teller in the January window. Haven't got long in terms of until it comes about, and also the window's not open for long, but still plenty of time, I say, to get business done. Matthew, thank you very much, Lassie, as well for coming on. Tell people a little bit different. I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you to tell people where you're joining from.
So I'm joining from Lincoln, Nebraska, which is about as dead middle of the 48 United States as you get. I apologize for the mess behind me. It's been we're prepping for Thanksgiving, so I've moved all of the mess from the other rooms into this room, which is, you know, not where people usually go. So I'm joining from the middle of the U.S. Excited to talk transfers. This is a fun, as you all said, key window for us coming up. So, and also excited that we get football back this weekend. These international breaks are just the stop and start nature of them is just killing me over here. We need to just let's get going here. Play some games.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. 100%. It'd be great when the international break is over, which is so nearly there. I mean, I'm glad to be saying that Thursday show, which, by the way, now I think about it, Thursday show will not be hosted by me. It'll be hosted by the wonderful Philip King in my absence, because I'm in Leeds for the Football Content Awards 2025, which is super exciting. So really looking forward to that. Again, sharing the stage with amazing people. And I say it so many times, but I mean it. You know, when you look up to YouTubers when you're younger, maybe before you start your whole content creation and YouTube journey, or when you first start it, you see people you watch on your screen, and then you get the honor to collaborate with them, then share the stage with them at an awards ceremony as well. It just makes you think, wow, this is, you know, quite special. So thank you to everyone who voted for me, who nominated for me, the reason that I'm there. But if you're listening today in terms of the podcast and you're new, if you're listening via YouTube, because you can listen live, please do like and subscribe. If you are listening live, get involved. Let us know how you're feeling right now as a Tottenham fan. But if you're listening via audio podcast platform, please follow and a 5-star review. Let's get straight into them, because it is, you know, the international break. So we've got to talk about England. So we'll start with England. And Joseph, I'll come to you. 2 wins for England, 2-0 win over Serbia and 2-0 win over Albania. Do you think these results, more than anything, prove that England can overcome obstacles, maybe teams that sit back a little bit more like Albania did? So how do you feel going into the World Cup? Has this given you any more positivity?
I mean, it's a difficult one. It's hard to really know. Obviously, there's a lot of noise around the England camp at the moment with everything with Tuchel and Bellingham, and there's a lot of kind of uncertainty as well with what team is going to be going in the summer. What team we're going to be seeing. Obviously, those players included in this squad where we're probably unlikely to see them in the final England squad. So the likes of Alex Scott. I mean, I was really happy to see him in the England squad, but is it realistic he's going to be in the final England squad? I doubt it. So I think you can take a little bit of something from these games, but I wouldn't rest my laurels on him. I wouldn't be thinking too much into them. Again, not massive games. I guess Serbia and Albania was it. But again, you got to play what's in front of you. You're going to be playing against teams at the World Cup that maybe aren't as the caliber of where England are at, and sometimes you do have to kind of try and defeat a low block, which hasn't always been England's strong suit. We saw it in the last international tournament. We did struggle with it many times and had to rely on late goals to try and get us through that. So we'll see how we go. I'm trying to be cautious. I'm not trying to get too optimistic about England's hopes because, again, we've been in this position before where we look like we've got one of the best teams on paper, but it doesn't always come through when we want to, see it in the final moments, especially in that, game against Spain in the Euros. So I think, again, let's be cautiously optimistic and wait and see. But again, we've got the talent. We can see that in the players. We can see that in what they do for club and country. When you've got Harry Kane up front, you've got a goal scorer that, you can rely on. Obviously, he scored twice in the second game. And but yeah, I'm interested to see what Tuchel does now, because I don't feel like he's kind of got his starting 11 yet. I don't know if he's 100% certain on exactly what his starting 11 is. And that is worrying a little bit. The fact that you are kind of mixing things up. I know obviously he's only just come in, so he has to kind of get an idea of who can do what for him. But, you look at some of these other national sides and they're quite settled on who plays every week. And they're kind of going into this tournament knowing exactly what every player is going to be and exactly what they're going to do. So we'll see. We'll see how things go. I think we have one more international break before the World Cup. So it's that's going to be a big one. Towards the end of the season to see who's most likely going to be, kind of in that starting 11 in that squad and on the plane to America. So yeah, again, not a bad international break for England, but I'll be honest, I'm quite happy to see club football back now. Some of these international breaks and these friendlies just end up with injuries for your club. I know we'll come on to Pape Sarr, and but there's Arsenal have got Gabriel out now, so kind of sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But again, all these injuries are just so needless when you want club football. It's quite important to all of us. So yeah, we'll see how things go. But again, cautiously optimistic for England going into the World Cup.
Thank you, Joseph. And I was gobsmacked today because I was talking to an Arsenal fan, and they were right in lots of ways, but they're just like, oh look, and more injuries in the international break. Everything just goes against Arsenal. No one wants Arsenal to win the title. I looked at just went, have you seen some clubs' injury list? I said, look at Tottenham, for example. So sometimes you just got to get on with it. I said, what about all this money that we spent? Oh, well, where are we in the table? It's like, okay, we'll come back to this conversation, shall we? Actually, the worrying thing is they are looking good.
That is Arsenal fans, though. That they think that they are the victims of football, if you'd like to put it one way. They apparently injuries only happen to them. And again, obviously, Gabriel going out is a big miss for them. And obviously, it is a shame for them because he's been probably their best player this season, Gabriel. And now with a muscle injury, it's doubtful that he's going to be playing against in the North London derby. Don't know how long he'll be out for. It's a big injury. But yeah, like you said, every team is getting injuries and nobody really wants these international breaks, especially when they're friendlies. Because I'm pretty sure he picked up that injury in a friendly against Senegal. Not even, or it might have been a different game, but it's not, it's not even a qualifier. It's not like really an important game. It's just a game kind of thrown in there for the international break. And it's a shame when you get injuries in those ones. So, but yeah, that you got to expect it, especially being online. You've got to expect these people to come out and start complaining when they have a chance.
To be fair, this was actually at college. This is in person, which makes it even worse. And do you know what? I checked out the whole conversation in my head when he said to me that the whole officials dislike Arsenal and other clubs, top six clubs get away with it. And what was annoying is he's actually making good points about maybe top six clubs and referees, but then it just sort of brought Arsenal into it. And it was just, this agenda against Arteta and Arsenal. And I'm thinking to myself, Arteta, how much does that guy get away with? And how much do Arsenal ultimately get away with too? But hey ho, that's football, variety and differences in opinion. Tell you what, Luke, I'll come to you. I mean, after these 2 wins for England, what positions that leave you in as a supporter, going into the World Cup? Because let's be clear, we're going to face better opponents, no disrespect, than Serbia, than Albania. But in particular, that game against Albania, I just thought there was a little bit of resilience shown from England. So has anything changed from these 2 games? Maybe players you want to see in that World Cup squad or you want to see in the starting 11? So basically anything that's changed for you in those 2 games.
I think Joseph was right. It just on the basis of that with the team, we don't really know what Tuchel's best 11 is, and I don't think he does. And I'm worried that we're kind of going to be in the sort of Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes era where we're just trying to shoehorn players into positions, and it's not actually their best position. You got to go with either an idea of you go with the best 11 players, you put them on the pitch and find a way, or you say this is my system, and you might be a better player than this player, but you don't fit my system as good as X player. So he needs to make a decision around that. I know he's come out and said things like he don't think, I think it was Bellingham, Foden, Kane, and one other, I can't remember who it was. He said they can't all play together. But it's a bit of a strange one. I mentioned Alex Scott didn't even play in the second game. I always feel this with England. We do a lot of token gestures, and they don't actually mean anything. They're not actually being called up to see if they can make an impact, if they can bring something different. It's almost just like, we'll bring them in and let them have a few training sessions and put them away again. So it's not really beating the poor teams that's the issue. It's when we come up against the big boys, we a little bit kind of like we enjoy playing against the smaller teams. We enjoy the bit of hard work and the difficulty breaking them down. But then when you come up against top level, that's when we seem to really, really struggle. So it'd be interesting to see what he does. I like that he seems to be quite disciplined in terms of if you seem to make a mistake within the squad, then he drops shy. There seemed to be a bit of thing with Jude Bellingham, as you mentioned, and he kind of left him out for the first game. But it'd be interesting when you get to the big games where you know that you need the wins. Quarterfinals, does he still make them big decisions, or does he just go, Bellingham's a big name, he plays for Real Madrid, he's got to start, Kane's a big name, he's got to start? It'd be interesting. But we've come a hell of a long way from a couple of years ago when everyone was telling me that Watkins should start in front of Kane, and now all of a sudden it's if we don't have Kane, we've got absolutely no one.
Yeah, it's so true. Harry Kane, I mean, it literally carries for me this England team. That's the thing with this Arsenal fan as well. We just couldn't see that Kane was England's best player, and I laughed at the fact that I even suggested it. So hey ho, make of that what you want. Both on clearly a different planet. But Justin, before we move on from England, in these 2 games, I mean, by all means talk about an in particular game out of the 2, but anyone that impressed you, or to flip the question, anyone that disappointed you?
Nobody, I think, that particularly stood out. I think what we saw was nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, we've got to remember that the group that we had was pretty much a perfect group. If you'd have wanted, before the even draw had come out, when you'd have asked who you'd want to be in the group, you'd have pretty much gone with that. You might have changed your one here or there for someone like Liechtenstein or the Faroe Islands, but it was very much a case of that what we saw was what we expected to see. There was, I think, more for me, the bit that I was more surprised about was the fact that, we didn't see Spence in either of the games. So I thought that was a little bit odd, and obviously he did turn around. I remember the comment about saying that Kane, Bellingham and Foden couldn't play in the same team. And then with about an hour to go, or half an hour to go, we saw Kane, Bellingham and Foden. So, it was a bit of a strange one for me for that. There was nobody that I thought did anything dramatically different. It felt like from start to finish, it felt like a quite professional group, really. I think, obviously, if you had to pick one out, it would be Kane. I think we really would struggle if he was out of the picture, if you like. But I think we have to remember we've seen this before in other times. I remember on the Capello where we won every single game and then stunk out the World Cup and got battered by Germany. So we have to remember that what he has done has been very methodical. He has made it very clear the standards that he's set, and I think he's been very brave in terms of dumping Bellingham and dumping Foden and things like that to make it very clear. And he's done it with Lewis Skelly as well, which I was a bit surprised about, the fact that he wasn't fit, but he made it clear. He said, you're not in the team, so you're not up to match fitness, so I'm not going to pick you. And I think that's good. I think we've moved away from you're going to be in because your name is whoever. If you're not playing, you're not going to be in the squad. And I think we will see that reflect potentially in business in January, because I think there'll be players like Lewis Skelly, like others, who will think, if I'm not playing, I ain't in the squad, and that's a worry. So, yeah, that I would probably say if I had to pick one person stood out, possibly Kane. But then outside of it, I think the things that disappointed me were probably players that he's trusted and then just didn't pick at all, particularly Spence, because I thought he's done well for England in the last few games and then just didn't get picked for either game.
Yeah, frustrating for, of course, us not to see Spence. I'm sure he'd be frustrated too. But that's the thing, he's done well when he was relied upon. Thank you, Justin, there. Matt, can I come to you? Slightly different question. I want to talk about the USA and national team. Where do you stand with them at the moment, and what you've seen, and how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling a little nervous, to be honest. We're kind of still sorting out the team. There doesn't seem to be a cohesive unit or strategy under Poch at the moment, which is concerning a year out from, a World Cup, especially one being hosted here. There's been a lot of turnover in the selections for the international teams, some due to injury, some due to, our star player's girlfriend didn't want him to play, so he took a break under a new coach, because that's always good when Christian Pulisic doesn't show up for the U.S. So I don't know. We had high hopes when we, hired Poch as the, it was a major hire, right? That's the first major hire the U.S. has really had for the men's national team. And it now seems like it's just all kind of hip and hooray and not like tactics that the team can sort out and whatnot. We're not really showing up the way that I think we would have expected at this point, a year out. So I don't know. There's a little bit of, let's hope to God we have a very easy pool in group play for the World Cup, because if we don't, it may not be great for the home hosting. I know there's 3 countries hosting, but the main hosting country, it's a little concerning.
That's interesting. I mean, I have faith in Pochettino that he will turn it around, but it's worrying, certainly results-wise. And then what you say there in terms of overall, it's good to get that insight. So, hey-ho, I have to see how you get on. But thank you. I want to move on now to Spurs in terms of the international break and how our players got on. Luke, can I start with you? Sarr, he come off injured. I mean, at this point, we're just all praying, aren't we, that he's okay and it's just like a precaution, which the Senegal manager said that it was at the time.
Yeah, we all know what a precautionary measure injuries that Spurs get, and they never end up being out for ages and ages and ages, do they? So I never listen to anything I hear until they actually announce what's gone on, or normally what operation they've got to have. So, it's a tough one. He's had it feels like a very long time ago, but the first few weeks of the season, he was absolutely dynamite. He was brilliant. Scored a few goals in pre-season. obviously started the season off really well, and then he kind of dipped a little bit. I'm hoping that he can kind of find that form again. I think his energy and his legs and his ability to intercept the ball as well, particularly, and nick it off of opponents, is a real key asset in certain games. I think that's the problem with quite a lot of our midfielders. They've got very specific profiles and they're very good at very particular things, and it fits against certain opponents, but then against other ones, maybe their skills are not utilised in their best way. So I think that's why we probably haven't seen our best midfield yet, or I don't feel like Frank knows what his best midfield is just yet. And I think that depends on who we're coming up against. So hopefully it's not out too long and he can kind of get back to the levels that he was at the start of the season, because it's been a bit up and down from him and a few of the other players as well, to be fair.
100%. Justin, I'll come to you. I mean, with Sarr, let's say he's fitting okay. Is he a player? I don't want to get too much into the Arsenal game, but is he a player that for you, you'll potentially look at starting? Maybe that powerhouse in terms of energy in midfield, box-to-box midfielder? Oh, we can't hear you, Justin. Obviously got no audio, so we'll come back to you in a little bit, no problem. For now, I'll give that question to you, Joseph. I mean, Sarr, is he a player that you would start the weekend? Arsenal, North London derby?
I'm not too sure at the moment. I'm kind of, obviously I think Paulinho needs to start, and then it's obviously who will play alongside him. And I'd be tempted to put Benson Cora in there for a bit more, maybe of a cool head, someone who's been there. I know Pape Sarr's played in these games before, but again, there's been moments where he hasn't always looked. He looks like a bit of a deer in headlights, kind of running around sometimes aimlessly, just trying to get back in. Whereas sometimes with Benson, you've got a bit more of a cool head, someone who's kind of calm with the ball, can kind of take the tempo out of the game sometimes. And we've got to realise going into this game in the North London derby, Arsenal are the better side at the moment. They are probably going to dictate a lot of the game, and we need to be calm and good with the ball, and we've got it. And Pape Sarr can sometimes rush things, and it doesn't mean that he's not a great player. Like Luke said, he was unbelievable at the start of the season, looked undroppable, but he hasn't kind of continued that form so far. So, I mean, it's obviously good to have him available. We obviously don't know what's happening with Bergvall just yet as well. Obviously, I know he had a concussion, and then he went with Sweden, but then came back. I think the manager kind of said, he's still suffering with some issues from that. So we don't know really what's going to be happening with him. Is he going to be available or not? We'll have to wait and see. But still, obviously, you want Pape Sarr available in case we want to pick him, in case he needs, comes off the bench and things like that. So even if he doesn't start, I think, we hope he's okay. We hope it's not anything long term, because again, we're going into the the part of the season now where it becomes a game every 3 days, a game every 2-3 games a week. So we're going to need squad depth. So the last thing we want is injuries to start piling up, and long-term injuries. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Again, a couple of really big games. You've got Arsenal and then PSG on Sunday or Saturday, Sunday, and then Wednesday. So you're going to have to rotate even within those games. So even if Pape Sarr doesn't start against Arsenal, you'd hope maybe he would play the one in France. So we'll see what happens, but let's just hope it's not a long-term injury, and we'll go from there.
Lovely stuff. Thank you very much. Quick shout out to a couple of people in the chat. We've got Alfie here. He says, watch here while eating dinner. Big up. We'd love to hear him. Big up to QPR fan. Lloyd Royal says, evening, lads. And got a fellow content creator in Haspo who says, I'd be tempted to play Sarr, Bentancur and Paulinho versus Arsenal and save PSG. Well, save Xavi, he means, for PSG. Big up to J2 in the chat. Justin, have we got you back?
Can you hear me all right?
We can. Talk to us about Sarr.
Yeah, I think the thing we've got to remember with it is we seem to have two setups in the midfield, one for at home and one for away. When we're away from home, it does seem to work when he goes with Bentancur and Paulinho. Keeps us solid, keeps good shape. And I think it allows for the attacking players to go and hit on the counter, which against the likes of Arsenal, I think we don't have a choice. I think if we try and at this point go toe to toe with them, we're going to get found out. We're not at that level. We know that there are certain players in the squad that just aren't good enough. And I generally would not be too surprised, because if we're being realistic here, Saar and Bergvall are they kind of are similar in terms of what they do. They try and be progressive and link others into the play. You would be very rare that you would have both, Bergvall and Saar starting a game. So I think realistically, it's not the end of the world with regards to it. Obviously, I heard that he'd been taken off for a precautionary measure. So for me, I would go with a middle two of Paulinho and Bentancur for that game, because I think it's going to be a really, really tough game for us. And I think the discipline that we showed, particularly against Man City at the Etihad, I think is exactly how we're going to have to approach this game as well. So I think, and probably for the PSG game, we seem to be more suited to being away from home, because when we're at home, we're having to attack, we're having to press and things like that. And you don't necessarily see it with Bentancur and Paulinho. They are the sit in, break up the play, pass it on to somebody else and let them do the legwork. So I think it will be more the following weekend that hopefully either Saar or Bergvall will be available. I think he left the Sweden squad because of the concussion. So I think the hope being is that even if he doesn't play the Arsenal game or the PSG game, he should be back for the next game after that. So I don't think, particularly if it was any other games, I'd say it's a bit of a worry, because I do think, he has got that quality in him to help, particularly at home. But I think as we're away for PSG and Arsenal, me personally, I would go with Bentancur and Paulinho in that middle.
Justin, thank you very much for that. Tell you what, I'll stick with you, Justin. Has there been any current or big clue here past Spurs players that impressed you in the international break?
Has there been any? Do you know what? I can't think of any Parrots or any sort of Troys or any sort of. I mean, there's no Irish players I can think of. I thought it was quite nice. I mean, he's not a Spurs player, but I thought it was quite nice of Spotlite to stick his do the whole sort of like that and what have you when they were 2-1 up and then bottle it at the end. I thought that was quite interesting. But no, all jokes aside, 5 goals in 2 games. He's had a really good season, to be fair. I think I have a gut feeling he'll be back in the Premiership. Probably down at the bottom, possibly Leeds or Wolves or Burnley, somewhere like that, where they'll buy him for 20-25 million pounds, because that seems to be the going rate for, he's put himself in the shop window. He's not had a bad season for Alkmaar. So I would probably say, if you were to pick past or present, you're absolutely right. 5 goals, schooled Ronaldo, and has taken the Republic of Ireland from absolutely nowhere to now on the brink of the World Cup.
He's doing really, really well, which is great to see. So big up to Troy Parrott. Let's move on then to what today's going to be all about, the January transfer window. I mean, exciting times, nervous times, also frustrating times, I'm sure. Going to kick it off with you, Luke. How important is the January transfer window for Tottenham? Is this one more significant maybe than the past in terms of we've got a new look leadership team and new manager and hopefully heading in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, we seem to say every 6 months this is the biggest transfer window we've ever had, and that sort of stuff. And most clubs probably do, to be fair. But I do think this is a real pivotal one. Under the last leadership in terms of management, we had a really good first window. We signed some big players that are now important key figures in the team. But if you actually look back now and then the 18 months and the 3 windows that followed, a lot of money spent, but actually only one player that improved that 11. So what started really optimistically, actually, when you look at the transfers and who was being brought in, the level of them players, it wasn't to the required standard. And we can't repeat that. The level that we're targeting or targeted in the summer was a good level. But we need to carry on and maintain that now. We need to make sure that they're the sort of level of players that we're targeting, because we want to improve, and you can only improve by getting in better players. So it's imperative for so many reasons. It's imperative for Frank to be able to install in the team exactly what he wants and the tactics that he wants to kind of go with. We obviously, the fans, we had an expectation of certain things anyway. Then you go and win a European trophy and the expectations increase. So it's imperative for the fans. And then as well for the board, because it's probably going to be not received well, but I feel like they really threw Levy under the bus towards the end of his tenure, and kind of was like, this is all on Levy, why we've been negative over the last God knows how long, and why we haven't signed top players. But Levy was never the money man. Levy was always the person that was hired to be in charge. So if I was the owner and I knew that we had money to spend, and the Levy or my manager that the person I'd put in place to run everything wasn't spending it, I'd be asking questions. They never were. So it was very easy for them to go, oh, he was the problem. It wasn't us. So I think they still got a lot of proving to do. Let's see. As I say, what they targeted and who we got in was a very positive sign, but that needs to continue. That almost needs to be the level that we're at, and we progress, not that's the level and we carry on signing players that are below that now.
No, I think you make some really good points there, Luke, that we definitely need to pick up on. So thank you. Get the ball rolling nicely. Joseph, I mean, that is the big question, and Luke's hinted it there. I mean, do you have faith personally yourself in Inic and this new look board that we can get it right this window? It's not just getting it right, because I personally think that some of our signings in recent years have been better, let's say, but it's not about getting it right, Joseph, is it? It's about going, from here to that next level, and showing a bit of ambition to hopefully close the gap. We talk about Arsenal, you're right, we just can't compete with them at the moment, but that changes, doesn't it, really, by transfer windows?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've seen what Arsenal have done over the last 5-6 years. They've pumped a lot of money into Arteta's project and spent so much money and got in some top quality players, as well as spending big money on one or two players here and there. 100 million on Declan Rice was massive for Arsenal. We've never really seen Tottenham do that and fork out that kind of money for one player. It's a tough situation for Spurs, and as much as I'm going to hold off. I can't say I believe in Enoch and believe they're going to deliver on what they say they will. Obviously, I'm happy and ready to be proven wrong. But there's a big job needing to be done at Tottenham. This isn't the finished article of a team, nowhere near it. In fact, there's plenty of players that I think we talk up and we do think are great, but in reality, they could easily be replaced by other world-class players. Then we could definitely improve upon them. So I think the transfer window in the summer was very impressive. I think we brought in some real quality players. I mean, the fact that Kudus has really come in and almost become our best attacker straight away, proves that the recruitment team does seem like they know what they're doing, does seem like they have an idea of who to buy and how, the kind of the quality we do need to be getting. But again, you're not going to hit on every single transfer. You're not going to hit on every single signing, but we just need to see improvements, and we need to see more money being spent in terms of, when was the last player? Probably Xavi, I guess, but that still seemed kind of opportunistic for Tottenham in a sense. But when was other than that, when was the player that Tottenham signed where we were like, wow, we've just signed a player that any team would want, any team could have, any team would be starting them? There hasn't been many of those for Tottenham, but we see our rival clubs do this. We see Arsenal do it. We see Man City and Chelsea and Liverpool go and sign these unbelievable players that just, would go into nearly any team. And that's kind of what we're going to need Tottenham to start doing. If they really want to compete on the highest level, we've got to be going out there and spending 70, 80 million on a player to come in and improve our first team. And that's where Tottenham are currently as well. That's a bit unfortunate. I mean, you look at Arsenal and maybe Manchester City, they're not really signing for their first team, they're signing for their squad. But Tottenham aren't really in a position where we can just sign for a squad, because our first team isn't good enough. You know, there's glaring holes at the left wing position, possibly in midfield. You know, squad wise, but a backup left back. We don't have these, and we need to spend money on these positions. So, you know, you could even say a new striker. You could say Tottenham need a big number 9, a new one that's going to kind of try and fill the boots of what Harry Kane was. Because I don't know if we've got that right now in Koemwani, Solanke, or Richarlison. So, you know, and that's the other thing. We need to get players out the door. There's plenty of players that need to get going. And are we going to see that happening? We know Tottenham have struggled to sell in the past. So, yeah, it's a massive January and a massive summer. And I hope to see a lot. I mean, we've got Paratici, we've got Johan Langer, we've got, you know, it seems like we've got a whole kind of group just dedicated to almost doing this. So, yeah, we need to see a good window. And I want to be impressed. I was not impressed by the summer in terms of how it went, in terms of what happened with Gibbs White, in terms of what happened with Eze, in terms of the amount of players that apparently were rejecting us. It was a shame and disappointing to see as a fan of this club, because, you know, we should feel that every player should want to come to Tottenham. Yet there's plenty of players that have turned us down in the past. And I'm sure we'll come on to one of them that I'm kind of scared will maybe turn us down again for another opportunity. But, you know, we'll see about some possible options. But yeah, it's a massive window. I hope ENIC and the team can kind of deliver. But again, I'm going to be cautious because I was very unhappy with the summer window overall. I think it was quite poorly run and poorly done. And I think we looked like mugs a bunch of times, to be honest. And that was a shame. Even though we ended up with a great player in Xavi, although we haven't seen enough of him just yet. And although we did sign some good players, we still have some glaring holes that needed to be addressed and wasn't. And again, we seem to get mugged off at every kind of step of the way. And the fact that Eze went to Arsenal is still hurts a bit. As much as I'm happy with Xavi, it still hurts the fact that we were so desperate to get a player. All the fans really wanted him. And then he turned around and just went, no, I'm going to go to Arsenal instead. So, yeah, that's where we're at. And Tottenham needs to try and bridge that gap.
No, you're right. I think there's some good bits of the summer, but also like that, it is humiliating. You know, at the end of the day, it is not what we want to see. It hurts, doesn't it? You know, when you get players turn us down. At that point in the window, we hadn't signed Xavi Simons. We become a bit of a rut, wasn't it? A bit of a difficult moment in our summer window. Joseph, thank you. You're right to highlight that. Matthew, how do you feel about the upcoming January transfer window? We're getting to what we need in terms of personnel, your number of players, who we need, etc. But do you feel confident that, you know, we can get it right? You know, upstairs can deliver on what Frank wants and really have a window that sets up nicely for the second half of the season?
I think recruitment-wise, I think we know who we're targeting, right? The getting of Xavi Simons and the getting of Kudus kind of shows that. We know who we want to target. This will be a big window for, you know, everything was placed at Levy's feet, that he was the one who wasn't closing the deals, right? It was his financial structures that were causing problems. Well, now he's not there to blame. So what this window will show is, can we get the hard work done financially to get the players that everybody seems to be on the same page that we want / need to bring in? And so I think that's more, this window to me is more about actions rather than words, right? We can all talk for 3 months about who we need, who we want. We all know we need a left winger. We all know we likely need a striker, more midfield depth. You're right on the, you know, fullback depth. There's a whole bevy of players who appear to be available and out there for the taking. The question is, will the new board and the new, you know, ownership who say, you know, there's $100 million injection, whatever that's worth, put it out there. Go make the moves. Be busy on January 1 to, hey, this deal's in place. This one's in place. Don't wait till like January 20th. And then we're scrambling on February 1st to go fill the holes we've all known we've needed for 4 months. That's what this window is about to me. I'm not looking for home run signings that'll like win us the Champions League this year. I'm looking for quality pieces that we can either develop or can help us, you know, be plug and play. But they don't have to be superstars for me. They have to be guys that fit the squad, fit what Frank wants, and you get them in, and then let them gear up for, being in training with us all summer, hit the ground running next year.
Matt, I agree with you. I think you make some good points. But when for you, and I get January is tough, but when is the point we do sign these superstars? Because, this is not digging you at all, but, you get the club, and I know he's gone, but Levy said, look, we want to win the Premier League and Champions League. Meanwhile, we're going out here, and no disrespect, we signed players from Forest, Everton, Johnson, Richarlison, whoever. That's fine. You can say we agree or disagree with the signing, but my point is we don't often buy players that are like, boom up here, and Joseph highlighted it there. For me, Xavi Simons felt different. You're buying a top player that has produced international stage, produced on a big stage on consistently. Whereas, it's often young talent or buying from what I call, unfortunately, lesser clubs to Tottenham. So do you think this is something that will change? And is the summer a better time to buy these, hopefully? I'm not saying we're going to sign these Mbappes or anything like that, but you think that we can sign maybe and act like a top 6 club?
I mean, I would hope so. I just am not getting my hopes up that we're going to do it and then rate the January window as, is a bummer because we didn't get a superstar that everybody knows is impossible to get over the line come January, right? Would I love one? For sure. Do I want to see us go, oh, hey, Adam Wharton's going to cost $80 million. Let's go for a $10 million guy and hope we can develop him into Adam Wharton? No, because that's kind of the same thing we've done. So I know I'm saying there's kind of a fine line to split here, but I'm just not expecting a superstar in January because unless you're the likes of, Man City got some over the line last January, right? But it feels like we're not yet to that level of let's go spend $100 million in January to go get somebody in. That's kind of the way I'm viewing it.
No, that's fair enough. Thank you, Matt. I really do appreciate that. And Justin, this is the first window back for Fabio Paratici in an official role. How much of an impact can the Italian have? And does that give you more confidence going into the window? Oh, less confidence?
No, I think more confidence. I think the difference we've got now is we've got a guy who the reins should, in theory, be let off. If we are led to believe what we've been told, that this ownership didn't just ask Daniel to leave, they booted him out the door and locked the doors behind him pretty much, and threw his stuff over the top, if you like. They've set their stall out here. They haven't gone about this whole, sheepish way, or we're going to maybe try and be organic and all that. No. They've been bold. They've been very much out there. Right, you lot get out the door. This is a setup we're going to have, and this is what we want to achieve. And you have to be very careful when you do that, because if you turn around and you then don't deliver, you look like a bigger idiot than the one that you knew wasn't going to deliver in the first place. That's the difference. Everybody knew with Daniel Levy what to expect and weren't really surprised when deals fell through. So I think now with Paratici, now that the reins will be unleashed, I think what we should, I do disagree slightly with what Matt said there. I do think we should expect a superstar to come in. I do think we should be right to be, wanting, top-notch players. The club have gone out and bought the potential. They rammed in effect, the youth academy with players they bought from here, there, and everywhere, and have filled that all up. And we're seeing at the under-17s World Cup that we've got a couple of players there that are doing well, So I do think the club really has put its head above the parapet and has basically made it ready to be shot at. So, we're hearing tonight that Semenyo has a £65 million release clause. That should be triggered by Spurs 1st of January. No questions asked. It should be done. There's the money. Get it done. Because whilst I was really impressed that we got Siemens over the line, I did feel that, unfortunately, it put him in a difficult position because we didn't solve the left wing position after losing Son, and we're having to turn around to him and go, well, we want you playing there, but we want you playing there, we want you playing there. So, we've seen the success that Paratici has had when it's done on a budget, and let's be brutally honest, he can do, he has had some stinkers, we know that, but I do feel that with the likes of, the players that are being talked about. And let's not forget as well, there's a World Cup in the summer. And if you've got players at clubs where they're not getting enough game time and they're being told, like we've seen, and I'm not saying we should go for Lewis Skelly, by the way, but I'm using him as an example of what a manager at an international level is telling a player: you either need to play for the club you're at or go to another one. If we can go and get a big name, if, for example, Ivan Toney, if he has aspirations of playing at the World Cup, it's been made clear to him he needs to get back in the Premier League. So that is something that Tottenham should be looking at. If you could turn around and you could go and get Semenyo and you go get Toney, you are then pushing realistically for the top four, and then obviously you then take the further steps in January. So I do feel that we've not seen a Fabio Paratici where he is let off the leash. I feel like everything's been done. Could you get me something within your contacts that's within budget and what have you? And going back to something that was said before about the likes, and I agree with this, when I can't remember who was talked about Brennan Johnson and things like that. It should now be a case of, if somebody comes in with a, let's say, 30, 35, 40 million pounds under the old regime, no, not enough. We need more money because we're not making a loss on this. I think now we need to, I wouldn't be surprised if Paratici's allowed to go, yeah, you can go. We'll take 40 million for Johnson. We'll take the 15 million pound here. Out you go. Richarlison, Everton offer us 30 million pounds. Fine. We take the hit. We lose the 30 million quid. I think hopefully that is something he will be given free rein. Again, though, it's going to be interesting to see if this ownership is prepared to put up or shut up.
Very nice ending there. Thank you very much. A quick fire question across the panel, which will get you thinking, I think, anyway. And it's, how many players do we need? So, again, you can interpret this question any way that you want, but it's realistically what you think Tottenham should be doing, because it might be a case you think, we need two, but we could survive with one. Then by all means do say two, but let's be realistic. Let's not be saying 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, because that's just not going to happen. So how many players do we think Tottenham will need? We'll get into positions just after. Joseph, I'll kick it off with you. How many players do Tottenham need?
I think we realistically in this January window need 3. I think we need a backup left back. I think we desperately need a left-footed left back. I like Jed Spence, but in my opinion, he's a right back, and we need somebody else to rotate with a doggy on the left. I personally think we need a ball-playing midfielder. I don't think anyone at the club currently is good enough at that role, so I think I'd like to see us buy someone. But if they really like the idea of Adam Wharton or something like that in the summer, then I maybe would hold off on it. And then we desperately need a starting left winger. That's the position is a must, no doubt in my mind. We need a starting left winger. Because we haven't replaced Son, and as much as I've liked Odebear, he's the only one that showed me any kind of glimpses to prove that he could be that player going forward. Nobody else in the squad has. I think you could, you also probably want a striker eventually. I know there's talks about Kinsley possibly wanting a loan move, and then you need another backup goalkeeper. So there's other things, depends on who goes out. But I think those 3 are kind of, the ones that I feel like a must, especially definitely a left back and definitely a winger. So minimum 2, but I think you could push for 4, to be honest, in 30 days.
I like that. That's the way we should be looking. Ambition, ambition, ambition. However, sometimes maybe less is more, because it shouldn't be, but I'd rather assign 1 or 2 quality players and go out there and sign, like we had, for example, the Bale money. I'd rather us get less but better. That makes sense. But why not get 4 great players? That is what I think you're hitting at there, Joseph. I mean, hopefully we can do that now. Fingers crossed in the January window, but time will tell. Luke, I'll come to you. How many players do Tottenham need in January, and also what positions?
Yeah, I think Joseph's got exactly right. I think we need 4. I think we need I would ideally prefer a left-footed left back, but I think we need a fullback of some sort at the very least. If Spence is now a left back, then we need a right back, but we definitely need a defensive fullback. a ball-playing midfielder, I think I'll still stand by. I think Morgan Gibbs-White was being signed to play as an 8, not as a 10. I think Morgan Gibbs-White and a Palini are in midfield against the bottom half of the Premier League, especially at home, is the sort of way that Spurs fans would want football to be played, and not necessarily pairing Palini and Bentancur together. And then the left-hand side and a striker. I think they're exactly what's needed. If I was playing Football Manager, that's exactly the players that I would be looking to sign, or they're the areas that I'd be looking to sign. But obviously, so much goes into it, as Joseph mentioned, whether Kinski wants to stay around, whether he doesn't, whether is Solanke going to be completely out all season? If so, then you've got a player there that can't be shifted on. Does Basuma stay? Does he not? So there's so many different caveats to it. And also, one thing that is being forgotten about by some fans as well is that Champions League squad, there can only be 3 changes. No matter how many players go out and in, you can only change 3 players over. You would expect there isn't enough coverage at centre-back, so you would expect Dragusin comes into that. So that only then leaves 2 players. So you can't, if you bring in 3, one of them can't go into your squad, or you then go in short at centre back. So there is a lot of differences with this squad. It's really weird. We've got a lot of players that are probably like second in the position, so they're probably not the left winger you want to start, but you wouldn't mind them coming off the bench. We've got a lot of them, but actually we need to improve the 11. And just going on to the point about spending a huge amount of money and signing superstars, Spurs are at a really difficult situation because there's no point in my eyes going and dropping £100 million on a player because we've got too many holes in the squad. There's no point going and just as an example, if everyone was talking about going and sign Walton, go and sign him for 100 million. But what happens if that 100 million meant that we didn't get Mohamed Kudus and we didn't get Palini, I say? Are we in a better squad because we've got a potential superstar in Walton, but actually now we've got no right winger? So I think that we can actually improve this squad by signing £50 million players until we get to a level where we've got £50 million players in every position, and that's when you go and get your absolute superstars in the top say 5 or 6 in the world in their position. Hopefully we'll be in a position to be able to do that. So it depends on how much money's to be spent. You could go and spend 100 million if you've got 250 to spend, but if you've only got 100 million, is it worth going all out on one player when we've just the first 2 guests have said we probably need 4 positions?
Exactly that. Thank you, Luke. So you sound like you're closely aligned there with Joseph. Matt, for you, how many players the Tottenham need in this January transfer window? And same for you as well in terms of positions. What do you reckon?
Had you started with me, it would have been the same answer. I'm saying 3 or 4. We need, fullback depth. Midfield is clearly a problem when we have to basically start all of our 3 healthy midfielders against Arsenal and hope nobody gets hurt. Left wing has been a problem since August. And then if we can get a high quality number 9, great. But I do think that a very good starting left winger helps the strikers we have. So I would settle for 3, but ideally 4 would be the goal. And much like Luke said, that's what I was going for, was like you can get the up and coming superstars for 50 million, right? Semenyo at 65 million is worth it. Adam Wharton at 100 million isn't. That was my point. Like, not to just say, oh no, we're not getting superstars because whatnot. I think that would be skipping a step for us, that we need to get the holes filled. And then once you have that, you get the superstars so that you have now really quality depth everywhere.
Okay. Thank you very much, Matt, for that. Appreciate that. And Justin,
can I quickly say something on that? Because I do understand that point, like Luke and Matt, you're making, but then couldn't you say it the other way around? Let's say in the summer you go and get Adam Wharton for 80, 90, 100 million. Okay, you spend a lot of money, but that then you've got that player possibly for 5, 6, 7 years, maybe for his career, at the base of your midfield, and you can just build around him. So I don't, you can look at it either way. Like, you could say, okay, the £100 million player is your final signing to complete your squad, or it can be one of your first ones and then you build the squad around them. I don't feel like it has to be one way or the other. I just think if there's an opportunity to go and get the player, you go and get them when you can. Because let's be honest, Adam Wharton's one of those players that I think Manchester City could look at soon, Liverpool look at soon, Tottenham will want, but other teams are also going to be looking at them. If Tottenham had an opportunity going, he's desperate to leave in this summer or even in January, and nobody else is bidding for him, I'd be like, okay, Tottenham should go and bid for him and get him.
But if we,
you know what I mean?
I completely understand what you're saying, but if you go and spend £100 million on Adam Wharton and then the next 2 years you don't get into the Champions League, he's not going to stay for a 7-year contract. So it depends on what you follow it up with. Like, as I'm saying, it's hard to say what we're going to do, but I think Palhinha was always viewed as we're probably going to end up signing him for 30 million is what is expected. And Kudos was 65. So if someone said to me, right, at the start of the season, you're not going to sign a right winger, you're not going to sign a left winger, you're not going to sign a striker, but you're going to spend £100 million on Adam Wharton, I'll be like, no, we've got far too many holes in the squad to spend £100 million there. Whereas if we go and spend £100 million on a Palhinha and a Kudos, now all of a sudden we're starting to get together a squad of players that will eventually we can go and sign Adam Wharton's at 100 because he completes the squad. But Adam Wharton is not going to change us from being a 17th place to a Champions League team, whereas Palhinha, Kudos might do. Do you understand what I'm saying? I just think that we're not at that level yet. And it's all right signing these players, but we also then need to compete to keep these players. Van der Ven is not going to stay if we are in Europa League, or if this year we get Conference League and then we might get Europa League next year. Van der Ven saying, I want you to sign top players. I want you to get to the top and be at the top constantly, not having holes at left wing and holes at right wing. So I just think that we've got too many holes in the squad at this moment in time to be spending 100 million. And it might work in our favour. The only position you could probably argue for me is the striker. If you go and get a Harry Kane numbered striker, which is obviously ridiculously hard to do, if you go and get someone who gets 30, 25 league goals a season, you could argue that you could play with holes because he's going to get you out of trouble. But I don't think there's many of them around. And if they are, is Spurs going to be the one place that they go to? But yeah, no, you're not. I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just my opinion, personally.
Yeah. No, I get it. I can see it from both ways. I just think, I don't know, in the same way you said about Van der Ven, like eventually, yeah, he probably will want to leave Tottenham. It's a sad truth because we don't know if we're going to get there. But maybe if you do start targeting world-class players, he's going to realise, okay, this actually can be a world-class team rather than going and signing £30 million on Wilson Odobert or Matthias Tell and hoping in the future they're going to become that. Actually, just go and get the player who's already there and he's going, okay, you know what, this team can actually compete. You know, at the start of the season, obviously we had last year was a bit of a weird season. But at the start of this season, no one thought Tottenham were going to be challenging. If we go out there and go and buy Adam Wharton, as well as going, this is the position Tottenham needs to go and spend massive money over the squad. You're right, but it's just, I don't know. I can see both sides. I'm not saying that you're wrong either. Yeah. I do understand what you guys are saying. It's just, I don't know. For me, it's kind of like, I do think Tottenham do need to go and spend big somewhere eventually because we're seeing all these other teams do it. And let's be honest, like, I know Arsenal were in a good position when they signed Declan Rice, but he has helped them springboard into becoming even better. They signed him and he kind of is now there. He was their midfielder and now they have Ødegaard around. They have Mikel Merino, they have Eze, they have, and it's all kind of built, Zubimendi, all built around Declan Rice being that vocal point. Tottenham don't have that right now in their team. They don't have the one player where you're like, he is going to be Tottenham's player for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years. We need that, especially in midfield. It's such an important position. And right now we don't have it. It's just, it's just a conversation.
I agree. And the thing is, you never know with football, right? So like, and this goes back to, we're arguing both points here. We're both like right, probably. But the problem is, say we go and spend 100 million. Let's say Wharton is the guy. So we go and try and sign Wharton for 100 million. The problem that you've got if you haven't got additional funds, and that's why I always go back to, we need to know, if you know what the funds are, you can then make a better judgment. Obviously, we're not going to be privy to that. But if you go and sign £100 million on Wharton, and then Udogie picks up a hamstring injury or a thigh injury like he has done, all of a sudden, Spence and Porro have to play every game in Champions League and Premier League, or Ben Davies is now your left back. And world-class
Yeah.
players are going to go, no, we can't like seriously. If we want to go compete, we can't have Ben Davies playing every 2 weeks. We can't. So it's a difficult one. Do you balance out the squad and then bring in the stars? Do you buy the stars and hope everyone stays fit? It's a difficult one. The club's got a hard one to go with, I think.
Yeah, I'll say two things. One, I was going to bring up Declan Rice because when Arsenal signed him for 100 million, the reaction was, why are you signing him for 100 million when, like, and you said they built around him, right? But it took and Arsenal's obviously been really good for a very long time, but they haven't been elite until they filled in around him. He helped, but there was still, like, where was the attacking players for the last couple years, right? They had a guy get injured, like when Saka was out, basically no attacking threat from the front three, because maybe they could have spent money elsewhere. The other thing is, coming from a US sports fan side of things, I've watched teams, baseball is the best one because it doesn't have a salary cap. All the other American sports have a salary cap. I've watched teams like this year's New York Mets spent $700 million on signing Juan Soto, which is an absurd amount of money to begin with. It's a 15-year deal, whatever. But they only had 2 starting pitchers out of a rotation that should have 5 starting pitchers. They panic bought, some other guys, right? So they spent all this money to get the superstar to appease the fans and be like, hey, new ownership, spending a bunch of money. Guess what happened? They missed the playoffs because they just weren't deep enough to compete. I've seen other teams where they do the opposite. They build up, they sign some key guys, and then they add the superstar that takes them to the next level. So that's kind of where my thinking is. I'm not saying either one of us is wrong. I'm just saying that's what's jading my thought process is. I watch teams build up, and then you sign that, coup de grace type signing, so to speak, that puts you over the edge where you have depth so that if something happens, you can, make it sustainable.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think it can work both ways because there's examples in American sports where they've done it the opposite way, where they've got an okay team and they go and sign a star.
Yeah, I mean the Dodgers the last 2 years have signed $1 billion worth of players and they've deferred a bunch
and they've won
of money
each year.
And they've won each year, but they're also in a market that allows them to do that, and they have unlimited.
No,
funds.
Of course. Like, American sports it's hard to kind of
correct
compare because it's it's franchises, it's a closed off league, it's very
it's not a perfect one-for-one comparison.
No, I get that, but again, the same thing. I know you mentioned about the Declan Rice situation, and again, I agree. They weren't. I mean, they were challenging for the Premier League when they were about to sign him, somewhat, and I would say that he gave them a step up. But I just think you're right. There was holes in their team, but let's be honest. Would you have rather signed Noni Madueke a season or 2 earlier to stop Saka from having to play every game, or would you rather have one of the best English midfielders we've seen in the last 15 years in your midfield? I know which one I would have rather had at the time they were at. Declan Rice gave them a pedestal to then start moving forward with, whereas these other players, they could be waited on because you could kind of fill in these gaps where, okay, we're not going to have to spend as much money on this. Declan Rice was such an important player for Arsenal. He kind of dictates exactly how they're going to play, and they had to go and spend 100 million on him for their team to start progressing in the way that they wanted it to. I don't feel like they could have waited on that. I feel like that was a position they needed desperately, and they got it done, and they made that move. And then the rest of the team has formed around him. Whereas I don't think you could have made a team around him and then just put him in the middle later. That's just my opinion. Okay. But again, I do understand both sides of it. I think it can work both ways. But again, the other problem for Tottenham is we aren't at the level of Arsenal in the sense of, okay, so we see a player for 100 million, we will go get him. Tottenham have to be opportunistic even in that big market because, I mean, I know we mentioned Semenyo. 65 million is quite a good fee release clause. Do any of us really feel like Tottenham are going to get him? Because personally, I don't. I think Tottenham will trigger the release clause But I also think City might trigger the release clause. I think
Mm.
Arsenal may trigger the release clause. I think Liverpool could trigger the release clause. And when that happens, who does he go to? He doesn't pick Tottenham. Let's be real. He wouldn't pick Tottenham. He would pick one of those other teams. And that's the position Spurs are in. Again, Adam Morton, for example, just as an example, who knows what will happen with him. But let's say Tottenham had an opportunity to get him this summer and other teams aren't looking at that position right now and we would have to spend 80, 90 million on him. I think Tottenham should jump at that opportunity because in a year or two's time, other teams are going to be looking at that position. Manchester City are eventually going to want to replace Rodri. Liverpool still need kind of defensive midfielder, and they're all going to be looking at who is the best one available, and we will go buy him. And Tottenham, unfortunately, when those teams come in for that, like we saw with Eze, like we've seen with other players in the past, we then get pushed aside, and that player goes, well, I'd rather go to the bigger team. And I'm scared that's going to happen with Semenyo, because 65 million is a great fee for such a top quality player. And I think Tottenham will trigger it. I think they will. I think they'll go, we would love Semenyo to be at Tottenham. He's going to go, yeah, well, Arsenal want me. And I'd like to go there. So it's tough. It's a really tough position for Spurs to be in. But that's why they need to push their weight around, put their weight around and start really showing that they can fight, fight amongst big boys.
Yeah, hopefully we can do that. I completely agree with you. Thank you, Joseph. Before we end, because I'm very of time and some of us have to jump, I'm going to do one quick fire question, and I mean literally quick fire. So I'm going to ask, in your ideal world, who do Tottenham sell in January? So basically, if it's down to you, and there could be names that you don't think will go in January, but you'd like to. Like, for example, a lot of Spurs fans at the moment may say someone like a Richarlison, for example. And by all means, list all the players that are in the Tottenham squad that you hope and want to see, without being, of course, disrespectful, leave in January. So I just want their names. I'm going to go in reverse order. Matt, I'll start with you. Who do you want Tottenham to sell or loan in January?
Well, I was going to say Basuma, but his injury kind of makes that a lot tougher. I could see Johnson going. I could see, I don't know, Bentancur is a tough one for me. And Kinski we could loan out so he gets some play time.
Okay, it's a good few names in there. Thank you, Matt. Justin?
Yeah, I think, the obvious are Richarlison, Johnson, Kinski, possibly Dragusin. Obviously we know that there are some loans that aren't working at the moment. As part of my loan roundup, there are some that I've questioned as to whether they are good enough for it. They would be the main ones. In terms of just very briefly incomings, I think we forget that we're not going to dump £100 million on one player. It tends to be done on installments. So I think we would have the flexibility in terms of incomings. The two, just quickly on that, would be Semenyo and Tony. But yeah, in terms of outgoings, as I said, sale-wise, it would be Johnson, Richarlison, and then I think loan-wise, Kinski. And then look at Jamie Donnelly getting him back from Stoke, maybe Solomon getting him back from Villarreal, people like that. And then maybe see with some of those other loan ones, could we actually sell some of them now? Ashley Phillips is tearing out at Stoke. Could we get maybe 10 to 15 million for him to push that one through? So, but yeah, I would say Johnson, Richarlison and Kinski, minimum.
Justin, thank you. Luke, what about for you?
A lot of the players that we could sell, I could see still having some sort of future. I think if we got Basuma on top form, I think he's exactly what Frank would want in terms of being a progressive player who can pick up the ball in danger and things like that. But I just don't think it's going to work. So I think Basuma's one of them. As long as we could get someone else that comes in, then Richie's one, because I don't have a lot of faith in Solanke staying fit. I actually think Johnson is a decent option off the bench. I think he brings what a lot of wingers don't in the Premier League, and that's goals. When we're not talking Salahs and Sakas, we're talking like top 10 wingers, for instance. Not many of them can bring a lot of goals. I think Johnson's made some improvements as well under Frank, and the fact Frank tried to sign him at Brentford, I think that he could turn Brennan Johnson into a decent option. But I can see why, again, it comes down to how much you're going to cost. If someone says, look, we'll give you 45 million for Brennan Johnson, and then you go and get Semenyo for 65, it's a no-brainer. So it really depends on what comes through the door. But yeah, I think Richie is the one because he would allow us to either go and get a left winger or bring in another striker. I think he's the one that we'll be looking at mainly to kind of shift.
Luke, thank you very much. And lastly, Joseph.
Yeah, I think Richarlison, I would like to see the back of. Depends on obviously if you can get him out, and there's other ones. Again, for me, I've always said about I don't really believe that Brennan Johnson's probably the winger for Tottenham going forward. But again, you're right, he's an option at the moment, and I don't think Tottenham are going to be able to revolutionise the team in a January window. So maybe you just hold on to him and see what comes in the summer. And like Matt said, with Basuma, it's kind of hard with his injury to know if you're going to be able to get him out the door. So it's one that maybe you have to keep hold of. And with the Kinski one, it only makes sense to loan him out if you have another option to come in. So I don't think we should be loaning him out. I think he needs to accept that right now he is the backup for Vicario, and he needs to try and fight for his place in this team rather than go out on loan. And obviously, yeah, there's many incomings that we need and many players that we should look at. Semenyo would be perfect, but again, it's hard to know if we'll be able to get him. But we need a winger. I would love for Tottenham to revisit the Savinho situation. I know that he signed a new deal, but it's not like he's been starting for City, and he still kind of wants to be in that Brazilian national team. And, I would like maybe Spurs to look at that. I've got loads of other names, but I know we're closing up, so maybe we'll do another podcast at some point talking about possible transfers and signings, because I think that would be really fun to go into. But one definitely Spurs should look at, if they can't get Semenyo, Iliman and Gi at Everton would be so good.
Yeah, what a signing that would be. Wow, I'd love to see him. But Joseph, I can reassure you and the panel and everyone listening and watching that there'll be only more January content to come as we get closer to that window. For now, we're, quite a little way away, a month and a half. And to even talk about it, I mean, some people go, it's just too early. But I think it's important for Tottenham. So this is the first time we've spoken on air about the January window in some detail. So thank you. We're definitely, and you're more than welcome, of course, Joseph, to do anything external and extra as well, because I know that's your speciality and real interest. But thank you to everyone. I think this wraps up nicely for this episode. I mean, always stuff to talk about, isn't there, with Tottenham, even during an international break. I want to thank my whole panel for tonight. Firstly, Justin, thank you very much for coming on. Tell people where they can find you and also what you do for the channel at the moment, because you're recording some pretty good stuff.
Yeah, so thanks for having us on. I know it's been a while, so hopefully you'll be on again soon. Yeah, obviously you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and obviously I've been doing the loan roundup, which has gone quite well. There will be an international roundup done on Thursday once all the fixtures are done, so I'll get that out there as well. But yeah, hopefully people are enjoying it. Obviously, if there's any feedback or things like that, just let us know. But as always, thank you so much for having us on.
Lovely stuff. Justin, thank you for your hard work, and thank you for coming on again as well today. Matt, thank you very much for coming back. I mean, what time of day is it with you over there?
It's currently about 2:15 in the afternoon. Here I'm 6 hours behind
right.
London GMT. Yeah, you can find me at the Salesman on X or Blue Sky, although I'm more on Blue Sky at this point, as X just became way too toxic on the timeline here in the States, at least. So yeah, that's generally where I am, and talking football, and maybe some grilling pictures coming up here for Thanksgiving.
Good stuff. Thank you very much, Matt. Luke, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on. Tell people where they can find you, but also your podcast, Spotlite on Spurs, which is doing very well, which is great to see.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on again. Yeah, Spotlight on Spurs is I'm on everything X, although as you said, Matt, can be incredibly toxic at times. Instagram, YouTube as well. We do a Thursday podcast. And yeah, just talking similar to this podcast. We just talk all things Spurs, come up with all different ideas. As you said, there's always something to talk about at Spurs. We support a crazy club, and it's great for content, right? Thanks again for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you very much. And Joseph, thank you. Always a pleasure as well. Where can people find you, my friend?
Yeah, thank you for having me again, Harry. Thank you for hosting. A great host as always. You can find me on X, Joseph THFC. Kind of just put out my own kind of ideas, sometimes in spaces, but yeah, maybe looking to kind of venture into more podcasting and things like that. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, thank you for having me again. Really looking forward to more more streams and more podcasts and talking more about transfers as well. Definitely love that. But let's just hope we have a good kind of end to this year as Tottenham fans, and we can see some improved performances and maybe a great result on the weekend. Who knows? But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Exactly that, and thank you to everyone. But a quick podcast update for this week then. So Tuesday's night as Premier League show will not go ahead. I'm travelling to Leeds for the Football Content Awards in advance to avoid any traffic, any problems further down the week on Thursday. So I'm going tomorrow night. College kindly give me the time off. So there'll be no Premier League podcasts on Thursday. The Spurs podcast at 7 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time will be hosted by Philip King from Frankfurt. So thank you to him for stepping in. Make sure to check it out. It'll be a great show. Everything's in place for it to be a good one. Previewing the North London derbies. In a way, it's a shame to miss that one, although I might not be saying that after the game. Hopefully, I'll be looking back and going, I wish I'd done that. Don't get me wrong, I'd rather it be that way, to be clear. Then at 8:45 p.m, again, Greenwich Mean Time on Thursday will be the Premier League podcast. Should be hosted by Alfie, and hopefully by then I would have won an award, but nonetheless, still great to be there Thursday. So thank you. Make sure to continue to support the channel because it will still be going. And thank you to my fantastic guests tonight. Thank you to everyone that's listened. If you listen by audio, drop us a follow and a 5-star review. If you're YouTube, if you like this in particular bit of content, like. If you're new as well, please do subscribe. There's only one thing left to say. Come on, you Spurs.